Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Sword Buddies. Justin, how was class? It was good?
It was pretty good, Troy.
Cool,
I understand
cool.
you have something you want to read for us to start off.
I do. So, this is from a book I've been reading that is not from specifically my school, but it is like a branch of my school.
Okay.
A thing about the Japanese sword arts schools is that they're like think like a massive tree, and they just keep branching out over time. Because eventually you're gonna have people who are like, I don't want to do it that way because I like the way the old master did it, and I'm the same rank as you, so I'm gonna go start my own school real quick, and then it just keeps propagating. Fun thing about my school is the only one that's been unbroken for over like 500 years.
That's cool.
Well, that's the point why my school is the more mainstream one, and why it's, I don't want to say it's superior, but I want to say it's more basic, because it's neither, but it's more like, this is how you wield it. But digress.
It's a little more baseline.
Yes,
Okay.
it's not like, yeah, but from this book, which is really good, it had a really good quote about martial arts itself that I thought was really nice, and it goes, "The task given to each person practicing martial arts is to try to live and accumulate one's own experiences by oneself without relying on the experience of others in order to obtain that sense of belonging for oneself. And the original aim of the practice of martial arts is to build individuals who have a strong will to live their own life."
Is to build up individuals who already have the strong will, or to build people who will have a strong will?
It's to build people who will have a strong will.
Okay.
That is, let me read it again just real quick, because I was kind of broken up and choppy. I actually read it from the actual book instead of my phone.
It's a little
Let me just remember which page it was on.
Yeah, that's fine.
But
Because I know it's interesting, real quick, about the tree thing. A lot of the treatises we've been looking at, I look at mostly Fabris, but Tim has been reading 2 or 3 other students of Fabris who wrote these books like 30 years after Fabris wrote his treatise. And they sort of expound on a few things that he touches on, but they go into detail about it.
like what?
About the proper way to gain the blade, and footwork techniques, and simple, like really basic things. They just go into much more detail about it, because Fabris is like, yeah, then you step forward, lift the foot, and kill him. And it's like, what?
It's the same kind of thing with this book, in that the techniques that it's describing are the same ones that I practice, but there are minor like differences. And it's just how they see the enemy differently. Though I'm not sure there's too much of a difference. Dang it, where is this?
While you're looking,
Yes,
another tidbit that I learned that I found interesting about the period that I'm studying is sport fencers from that time and before were expected, after a tournament, to go to the ball and dance. If you were seen at the ball not dancing, people assumed you like blew your steam too fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You went and fenced, but you don't have the energy to dance with everyone and be social. Like, you're not a real soldier. You're not a real warrior.
Like that. Okay, so that was a requirement of being social, of being in the group.
Yes, because most people who were partaking of it were of a higher social class.
Yeah. Well, You want to associate with. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was really weird too. I actually learned it from the longsword guys who share the space with us.
Weird. How is that going, by the way? Because I know you've been talking about them hopping around every now and then.
So they meet in 2 places. They meet where my school meets, and then they meet 3 different days a week up in the woodlands. If we were a little further north, I would probably be doing both. Because longsword is like, we study longsword, but when we bout, bring whatever you have. If it's sword and buckler, if it's just sword, if it's longsword, if it's polearm, bring whatever you have. You're welcome to use it.
They seem pretty legit.
They are pretty reputable.
Okay.
As far as like the Texas HEMA group, they're pretty well known. Sword to Sword is the group for anyone who knows. I need to go back and
look harder for that quote, but I just want to read it one more time because it did mean a lot to me, because it puts in a bit convoluted way how I do feel about martial arts, and that's why it's so important to me. The task that is given to each person practicing martial arts is to try to live and accumulate one's own experiences by oneself without relying on the experience of others in order to obtain that sense of belonging for oneself. Which is something I wholeheartedly agree. Every time I practice martial arts, or I learn another way of self-defense, or I learn another way of moving that, I don't want to say it's violent in nature, but it's martial, I feel better. I don't want to say stronger, but I feel more confident. Yeah. I feel like I've learned another puzzle piece.
A little emblazoned as a term that's like the only one coming to my head, but like you're energized by it.
Yeah, but also it's like the whole purpose, the whole endeavor of undertaking a martial art is to really learn how to be in the world around other people. Yeah. That was one of the things that, because I take this book and I've been taking it, and I'm taking these notes that's really what I did for class tonight. I had my own like one-on-one class with Sensei, which was good, but also, it was just, we just go at it because I'll bring questions and we'll just keep talking, and by the end of like 3/4 of class, we're just asking questions, and then the last quarter, we're going through as much techniques as we can. Yeah. But just even the interpretation of EI is different in each school. It's the way of just being. It's the way of kind of being in harmony. And one thing in this book that I found really interesting, it's a really poetic kind of way of seeing it. It's like, in the scabbard are infinite possibilities. Once you break the seal, heaven and earth separate. And only by learning the divine truth of what's the intent in your sword.
Because wasn't there a law where if your sword was drawn, it could not be resheathed without drawing blood, or was that a different culture?
I know that that's a popular saying we say in like a lot of things. I don't know. I know that, especially for samurai, if another samurai slighted them in a way, they would be totally within the law to be like, all right, I'm going to kill you right here, right now. Like if I was passing by you and we both had a sword on our left, and I passed on your left and I hit your scabbard with my scabbard, that means it's time to go, it's time to duel, and it's time to kill you.
That's what I've heard, because like we hear that even for European martial arts. Anytime we're carrying a sword for stage, backstage, a little tap, the actors are like, ha ha ha, but any fight director is like, you gotta fight now.
Yeah.
And they say that out of fun, but like that was the actual historical thing. If I was passing down the streets in Italy and I'm looking at a shop, and I'm a noble, so I have my sword and people are looking at it, and some other upstart noble walks by and just gives me a clang, I'm expected to look at him and be like, Sirrah, shall we have it out? Yeah. And we probably would have been expected to do a duel.
Yeah. In Japan, from what I understand, it's or for the studies, it's like there's only one class. Only the samurai class was allowed to be armed, but they had to be armed at all times. Like you could not be in public without having both swords.
Interesting.
Like you.
Whereas in Italy, you could not be in public with a sword unless you had a license to carry it, or were of the proper social class.
Really?
Yes.
Was soldier a separate class, or was soldier like?
I need to look more into it.
Yeah.
But Tim talks about, like, if you were a peasant, if you were a commoner, and you were seen with a sword, you were getting apprehended and arrested because it was assumed you stole it and potentially killed the man who had it.
Okay, so when we see that in plays, when the people, that makes a lot more sense. When because we both do stage combat, when we ever see it in plays, what I'm trying to talk about is like, whenever a peasant is seen with a sword, they get in trouble. I never knew that. Interesting.
It's a social thing, because like nobility is trained to use it. So like soldier, if you reach a certain status, you can be walking in your street threads with your sword. But if you were a soldier, you were expected. I'm assuming you were expected to be in uniform, and you were expected to be on duty. And if you were off duty, that's when I'm not sure.
I wonder how one would get a license to carry in a Renaissance Italy. I guess you would either have to
I guess same way
buy it.
Like same similar way you can get a concealed handgun license today.
Man, if they had
a process, probably not a training process, but like hey, this is what I do. This is my status, and I'm expected to be under threat. I'd like to be able to carry a sword around.
I wonder if you were part of a school, just like you're saying, like if we have certification courses, like if they had a certification course. Because I imagine not just anyone could, like any noble, or would every noble know how to fight? I don't think every noble would know how to fight.
To some degree, because I know the later in the centuries it gets with Rapier, it is more of a sport. It starts to become more of a sport as firearms start to develop, and then we can have a duel that way. That's a different way of doing it. But, I don't know.
That's something that actually Sensei and I kind of went back and forth on tonight in our discussions, was just the historical and kind of social aspect of it. How you really got to think about it when you really practice it. You have to take it into account.
There is something that is holding back a lot of the fencers in my class right now. Is none of them are treating the blade like it's real. Yeah, so it looks so different when Tim and I fence, because we are treating those swords like they won't flex and like they are untipped. We react to it as if our life is in danger every motion of the sword. And that is whenever you start getting good.
Yeah. Oh, man. I gotta find... Let's do it the next sword, buddies.
Okay.
But there's another really good quote in here. And it was just something about the... the thing of carrying a sword at all. The idea of being armed. The responsibility that is required.
Well, think about it today.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah.
Think about it
Good
in the
Lord,
climate
man.
of 2 years ago, whenever we were still in school and all we were seeing in the news was school shooting, school shooting, school shooting. There was a stigma of, if you are a concealed handgun license, there's a certain level of responsibility where you might be expected to use that to save someone else's life.
And there's a lot of studies, or a couple studies, showing that regardless of, even if you had the gun in front of you, it's still going to take you a minute to assess the situation. Because you're not always going to assess it.
Is he pointing at me or what?
Or what's that noise?
Yeah.
What's happening? But those who adhere to the weapons they are carrying, or in other words, those who are carrying swords, the symbol of their authority, political, or military power, holding on to their positions, often tend to forget that one's worth can only be discovered by oneself by gazing and examining the soul. And I know that's not...
That takes it from yes, this is a practice, but we practice this for divine purposes.
Yeah,
or this practice will have impact on your soul as a human.
Yeah, when I read that, kind of what I get out of it is if you are going to say, I have the authority and I deserve the power to carry around something that can end someone else's life, there also has to come a massive amount of
self-evaluation of that responsibility.
Introspection.
Yeah.
Being where am I at today? Am I okay? Should I be holding a gun around? Should I be taking it these places? It goes back to that saying, an armed society throughout history makes a polite society. Think about the Japanese.
Yeah.
They had... the whole country has customs and practices and, politeness out the wazoo. The same with, European feudalism. You had to, write a letter to set up a duel, or even courting. It's because everyone's might be walking around with a knife.
And you can't tell.
You don't know.
Yeah.
People are going to kill you.
People forgot that for nowadays. Because how many people do you see mouthing off for nothing to someone who might be carrying a weapon?
Well, and that's the thing is like, you got people have this false sense of security with cameras. And I'm like, I get that there's cameras around. But you know what? If someone kills you and it's caught on camera, you're still dead. And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't fix it. It doesn't stop it.
No.
And it feels weird to sort of feel pushed into this position of, okay, yeah, everyone needs to be trained to do something. Not everyone needs to be armed, but I think everyone should be trained.
Like it's not like I think everyone needs to be Rambo. No. It's not like I think everyone needs to, go get like Krav Maga training. But I think that there is a massive benefit in at least being able to, be able to control your body. Back when we were first taking stage combat with our teacher Adam back at U of H, just like the simple techniques, how to break a choke.
Yeah.
Simple techniques. Like I infinitely feel 10 times better about, myself in a situation like that. Or like if you can't carry a knife around you at all times, you know what you can carry around with you at all times? A belt. That's a ranged weapon. That's going to keep someone who has a knife at you at bay.
It's also a defensive weapon if you know how to use it, because I went to Europe right after a series of stabbings all over England. And I was like, Troy, I don't know what's going to happen. I want to be prepared. And you're like, great, meet me at the park, bring a belt. A belt? Yep, I'll have a knife, bring a belt. And we just did drills of, how do I stop this?
Yeah.
With a sweatshirt, with a belt, whatever I have.
Because, most belts are going to be leather. It's a pretty strong material. That belt buckle is going to hurt if you get hit by it.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's going to, if you wrap it around on one arm, you're going to have a longer reach. So you can keep backing up while they're trying to slice at you. It's not perfect, but you know what? If it keeps you alive, what does it matter?
Because you don't need much training to be able to do that.
No.
All you have to do in the situation of a knife is gain wrist control. If you gain control of the wrist that is holding the knife, you have control of the knife.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it doesn't matter with training. But it does in a modern context with firearms.
Mm.
The advancement, I don't know why. This light bulb just turned on when we were sitting here.
Talk it through.
But Rapier was the last sword to be popularized before the extreme advancement of the firearm. Before anyone could be carrying a firearm and anyone could use a firearm.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone could use a sword. Anyone could pick it up, but there's 3 new people in my class now, and fencing them is so easy. I can beat them left-handed, fencing half my normal speed. Anyone else, I have to fence right-handed, and I have to fence close to my normal speed. So, to me, that is proof enough. With a sword, or a melee society, an armed society is a polite society. But when you get into firearms, Troy, we could be taken out by a 2-year-old who's a little curious about their mom's purse.
Dude, there's a reason they called it the Wild West.
Yeah.
There's a reason, it was literally, you got a 6-shooter, you're the law.
Basically. And and I'm worried that too many people think about that today. And that's why I have that weird attachment to, man, if we got rid of all the guns and went back to, you guys can be armed with a sword, but give us all your firearms so we can destroy them all. That's an absolutely impossible thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the world would change.
Be definitely different.
I think we'd see a lot different personalities.
I often wonder about, and I hope this isn't too far off, I often wonder about the effect of laws like voluntarily fighting. Voluntary combat between 2 individuals. Is it Washington?
Yeah, in Washington State, if you have a dispute with a man, or if you have a dispute with another individual, you can walk out into the street with that individual, and under the supervision of a police officer, you can just box until you're content.
Mm-hmm. And I here's the thing, and I'm not going to say violence is okay. I'm not going to say violence is right. I'm not going to ever say it's the answer to resolve your problems. What I am going to say is there's a lot of people out there that resolve their issues by a good hook to the face.
Yeah.
And you know what? A lot of those people, they learn the lesson or they don't and they move on. But the problem is sometimes you get that hook to the face and you bounce your head off the concrete and you're dead.
Or your brain's rocked for the next week and then you got permanent damage.
Yeah, and at that point I'm like, yeah, they chose to do it themselves, but also like
that's the consequence.
But the thing is like, let's not even let that be an option.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Because like with this, yeah, someone walked by and tapped you. Excuse you. But like if you're in a conversation with someone and then someone starts to like say stuff that is insulting to you, you can be like, sir, shut your mouth or draw your sword.
Mm-hmm. So know you're serious then.
Whereas, we've probably heard about it on the news. We see it in movies all the time. Someone mouths off to the wrong hard dude, and all of a sudden, he's put a bullet through their head before anyone notices what happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know how true that is. It's fictional. But
man, I think with everything that we've seen with martial arts, I mean, even what you just said, there are moments when you fight someone who is a novice, or you experience or you spar with someone who is a novice, and it's like you don't even know how you're dead, which sounds kind of cliche and a little like, oh, I'm superhuman, but it's like, no, it's like you don't even know the levels of like you don't understand that.
You don't understand how these things injure you.
Yeah, you don't understand how you're already blocking yourself.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
Like the new guys, one of the new guys, we have a new girl and 2 new guys, and one of the new guys just keeps pushing down on the blade anytime he tries to attack.
Mm-hmm.
What he ends up doing is pushing my blade into his low line and walking right onto my tail. And yeah, he leans forward and gets me, and he's so proud of that. I'm like, but you died.
You're dead, man.
But you died. And then I fenced him later, actually fenced him in a bout.
Mm-hmm.
And I stabbed one hand twice and then cut the other one, and he kept fencing. And I was like,
you're done.
All right.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, you don't feel it, but
it's done. It's over.
This is over.
If this is
technically 3 points.
If this is a tournament, it's done.
Yeah, that's 3 points in one go of a bout.
I mean, he'll learn.
That's fair. This is literally his second week.
But it is. I find, and we'll close on this note.
Oh, there was a question I wanted to ask to close.
Oh, and close on that then.
So we'll go ahead and say what you said.
I think it's just. I don't know. It's always been on my mind since I ever got into stage combat and martial arts to just. Everyone needs the humbling. That's why I always go back. That's why I will always go back. Even if I don't practice this until I die, I'm always going to go back to a martial art because it's just
something.
It's just important to have that mental game.
It is refreshing to me to be able to see people that I believe are on different skill sets be able to kill me.
Yes.
Because I have more training than everyone there save 4 or 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
And while I can beat most of them, a lot of them can still kill me a few times.
Yeah, the luck of I don't want to say beginner's luck is a real thing, but it happens. Mm-hmm. Especially when chaos happens in a fight, and I'm lucky enough to have never been in a fight. Even just watching it, things are going to get messy.
Mm-hmm.
But what was your question?
To conclude, because one thing I've been looking for in my life as I've been doing this is how this work and the lessons I learned doing this work have been able to translate into how I live my life.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of how I interact with people, how I interact on the road when I'm driving, things like that. So what have you noticed in the work that you do in your martial art that has been able to better your life outside of it? or a lesson you learned in Iaido that you've also been able to apply to something outside of it?
You see, that's interesting because it's a tricky question because a lot of the things that I've learned, like I feel like very profound lessons, have just been reinforced by Iaido. I think what has really helped me is that, I don't know if I mentioned it on a previous episode, but one of the things that our teachers from Japan will always come over and tell us is that it starts when you wake up. Iaido starts when you wake up, because it's not just, a technique. It's not just a school. It's a way of being. It's a way of presenting yourself chest open and taking on the world.
You said Iaido translates into what?
It's the way that this book literally says it, which is a different. It's like the way of being.
Okay.
The way to
live, essentially.
Yeah. In this school, it says something like facing one another. Like it literally. It says its translation is literally facing or meeting a person.
Okay.
Doesn't say anything about a sword. Doesn't say anything about cutting or anything like that. Because, and this is a little side tangent, another translation or another way of Iaido is Iaido, which means the way of strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's how I try and look at every technique that I do. It's a battlefield. It's a war. And how I conduct myself is how I'm going to win the war.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's been if not my big takeaway, a big reinforcement in how I conduct myself.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else?
No?
All right.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.